Hey, so I'm going to walk you guys through adding sound to poetry for creative writing, which is what we went over in class. And there's a presentation, which I'm going to go through the presentation, and then I'm going to show you the assignment that goes along with it as well. So let's get started, shall we? So, adding sound to poetry. In the last couple of classes, we've talked a lot about imagery and we've talked about what it means to create an image in your mind based on the poem that you're reading. But now we're going to be talking about how that word choice can be really important. So you kind of already have a feel for this just based on words that rhyme. So certain things that rhyme or things that have a rhyming pattern have a sing-songing uh, familiarity to them, and it creates that feeling for the reader. Now we're going to talk about how certain words sound important. So, any good poetry is going to have these elements of both sight and sound. And what I just said right there, that's actually a really good example. Sight and sound. So, see, and even the word see, they all have that sound. So, that's alliterative in nature, which I'm going to get to alliteration a little bit later in the presentation. But also, it has that hissing sound, which draws your attention in if you're a reader. Um, and as I say here, you want your poetry to appeal to both the eyes and the ears. And Robert Frost, who we read a little bit of previously, it's okay to move your lips when you read poetry, meaning when you're reading poetry, it was meant to be read out loud to other people. And in fact, in older times, that would have been something you would have done is go to a poetry reading. So when you're reading a poem to yourself, maybe read it out loud rather than just reading it inside your head. So alliteration, which I alluded to just a little bit ago. So it's the repetition of initial consonant sounds, and alliteration is all over the place. Think of the TV show Bob's Burgers. People tend to really like alliteration. I don't know, like Happy Haycraft or something like that. So people really like alliteration. You've probably seen many businesses named alliteratively. And an example is Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, or I found this picture online, Peter Piper potato. So those are all alliterative phrases when they have the same consonant sound. So like Ali the alligator used alliteration is not alliteration because those are all vowel sounds with the A, and we're not talking about that right now. So it draws your attention in when you see something that's alliterative. So I'm thinking of a poem that I really enjoy where one of the lines reads, "The lone and level sand." So see how I just use that L sound repetitively and it draws your attention in. And speaking of repetition, I asked you before to do an activity with using the same three words to begin five different lines in a row. Repetition always draws someone's eye in when they're reading something. So when we're talking about alliteration, it changes up the pace of how you're reading. Think about just a moment ago when I was doing Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. I have to slow down and think about what I'm saying and why I'm saying it the way I am. So this draws the reader in. This is very new age writing. And you don't want to use it all the time. It's just like any kind of seasoning, as I said in class. Think of poetry as you're cooking something, and these are just little things to pepper in here and there. So this is a practice thing for you to do. You can do it on your own if you like, to come up with different sounds that are alliterative so that you can get a different feel for it. So like Charlie chews chocolate. So it doesn't have to just be one letter. Remember, it's the consonant sound. Or an example I often give my English students is fuzzy phone. So fuzzy starts with an F, but phone starts with a PH, right? But it's still the sound. Now, onomatopoeia, which is one of the craziest words that I always have to actually use spell check to help me spell it, and I am ashamed of that as your English teacher. These are words that some people call Batman words. So they sound like what they mean. So like ding dong, like if you're making like a bell sound in a story, that is onomatopoeia. And here are some examples that I pulled from various poems. So this first one, beat, beat, whir, thud. So those are all words that sound exactly what they are. Whir, like you say a car went whirring by, or something dropped with a thud. Um, through the precarious crack of light. So again, crack. It sounds like a crack of lightning. The lobbed ball plops, then dribbles to the cup. So making some of these different sounds, even when you're not using onomatopoeia, you so the lingering or droning sound comes from these nasal words like long and hum. If you hold out that hum, it like rattles your nose and your teeth a little bit. Buzz rattles a little bit off your tongue. Harsh sounds, like in the last slide, I said the word crack, which is onomatopoeia, but it's also a harsh sound, right? So these k sound like killing, garish, carnivals. So K, G, and C all create that really harsh sound that draws your mind in. And then I mentioned the hissing sounds earlier. So fish, hardly, chew, the, last, bite. So this was your assignment, and I just basically want you to go through each line in your poem. I want you to have one of these different aspects of these different sounds, but I don't want you to combine it. So I don't want you to have an alliterative line that also has the hissing sounds. I want you to have a hissing line and I want you to have an alliteration line. And that's only because I just want to make sure that you have a chance to practice each one of these concepts. And a 10-line poem is pretty short. It doesn't have to rhyme if you don't want it to, but it can. I like rhyming poems, but I also like poems that don't rhyme. So anyhow, that's what's up with adding sound to our poetry. And as we move along into some more hard concepts or more difficult concepts, I should say, these will be little tools in your toolbox that you can pull out to make your poetry a little bit more interesting.